What it is, y'all, it's your old boy Pilk, and I wanted to kind of come to you guys today with an interesting kind of just a kind of a lowdown, just kind of a thought process, I guess you could say, on DANCHRO, because I think by all accounts we just know fundamentally this game had a lot of unrealized potential. Just being completely frank here. This was a game that when it first dropped, it brought a lot of us over from Danmachi. Now, many of us had played Danmachi for years and years and years. Absolutely love the game, arguably spoiled by the game, but ultimately for the right reasons. Like, it was a fantastic game. And here we sit currently on DANCHRO's final maintenance. We're never going to see this screen again, at least as far as we understand. And today literally marks 2 months to the inevitable sunset of these of the online servers. There's an offline version of the game. We'll be covering that here soon enough. It's as easy as downloading the Japanese client, but you got to have the right tools to do that. Easier than you think, but also not incredibly intuitive, so we'll cover that in its own right. But I just kind of wanted to give my thoughts on this, because we had Danmachi for 6 years in the United States and for 7 years with the Japanese servers. So it was a long-lasting game. Gachas don't often last that long. There are more that are going into that realm. There's another gacha game that we play over on another channel that it's celebrating its 10th anniversary and then some. You know, there are some gacha games that do last that long nowadays. But when Danmachi launched, gacha games were like a year or two, and then they just kind of fizzle and they're done. It really outlasted that, especially for a property like Danmachi, because I'm gonna be completely fair here. Danmachi is not a AAA title. Probably should be, but it is not a AAA title, and therefore it's really not on that same level. It's gonna have a hard time holding that base. It's gonna have a real rough time kind of keeping that constant influx of new players on a global scale. I get it's a very popular franchise in Japan, but on a global scale, it's not nearly on like your Bleach, your Naruto's, your Dragon Balls, things like that. So the fact that we had that franchise for 7 years, just as a mobile game, is nothing short of amazing. So when this game dropped, a lot of us had really high hopes for the game. There were early criticisms and some well-founded criticisms. There were some major problems at launch, and they fixed things along the way. But they never quite fixed enough to really show they cared. And that was the biggest, I think, drawback to this. Aside from the awful gacha system. The abysmal gacha system. And we'll harp on that soon enough. But the problem that I've got with this particular game is that every single time they dropped a new feature, it was bugged like crazy. And I get that that's going to happen, but then you'd report bugs and things would just never seemingly get better. Or they drop a patch and then make it worse before ultimately making it slightly better and kind of tolerable. Looking at you, Abyssal Exploration. So it's a mixed bag. This game had every ability, every capability, and every right to succeed and go on for years and years and years. For those of you guys that don't know, Danmachi, when it left, it kind of left in its wake just a rash of love and support that it garnered, like, you know, a musical CD and all that stuff. We had 3 stories that became light novels. We got nothing like that with this. I know Mori was somewhat involved in this, but not to the extent that he was with Danmachi. In fairness, Amori was also less involved with this, because now he's got 2 anime. He's got a manga, his light novel series, and 2 anime that he's dealing with. So probably just doesn't have the time, to be completely frank. And I don't see how he does what he does already. But the reality is, it's just a bittersweet situation, because while going into a gacha game, we all kind of know eventually the game is going to end. This one does feel a bit too soon, you know what I mean? Like, it feels a bit early for its sunset. I know some people in the comments, and there are always going to be those people that are, oh, we knew it was coming, we told you so, it couldn't happen soon enough, blah, blah, blah. But let's be completely fair here. This game should have taken its lessons from Danmachi, and it should have succeeded. There's no reason why this game had to fail. And I would argue it did fail. Other prominent YouTubers that covered Danmachi, like, basically dropped this fairly, I say, early on, but, we had a bunch of people that held on through, anniversary and a half and eventually just lost interest in the project. And I won't lie, I got a bit jaded on it too at times. There were dry spells and banners that were just unforgivable and all kinds of things. But through everything, I stuck it out. And I'm glad I did. But the next 2 months are going to be really somber because when this closes, there is no new gacha, at least as far as I'm aware, no new gacha on the backside of this. For a year plus, we had heard about other gachas coming out that were going to parallel Danmachi. And when Danmachi ended, it had the ability essentially to just kind of or this game had the ability to pick up all those players and say, come to us, we have a place for you. There isn't one now. It's just not a thing. And I don't think there will be for quite a bit of time. We probably need another season of the anime. And even then, I think Wisteria is probably the property that most people are going to go with over this one. Not that I'm mad about that by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a bit of a bittersweet situation because, once again, this is the last time you're going to see this screen. More than likely. And when all's said and done, Team Caravan, I think, did a pretty respectable job. They aren't infallible in this. There's a lot of coding issues and simple problems that they could have very easily fixed and made things playable. But let's be real, the biggest issue was, and I know you guys want to hear me harp on it, the biggest issue was the gacha system. That gacha system really sank this game. Honestly, it really did. This is a crash course in how not to develop a game. When you make a game that requires 100%ing a unit just to be viable, the first dupes of that unit should be easily accessible. But all of these units were hidden behind a paywall. Getting a unit at all without hitting pity was a nightmare. It was nothing short of luck. And I had some atrocious luck. No, let me rephrase that. That's not what I meant to say. I had some outstanding luck. Outstanding luck. But I've seen other people out there with absolutely abysmal, atrocious luck is what I really meant to say there. I'm sorry. I'm just kind of winging this, guys. I'm going just kind of off the cuff on this one just because I want to get my true feelings out there. I really feel sad this game is closing, but at the same rate, I think it's a lesson that other developers and other publishers need to learn because greed ultimately is what crashed this game. Greed ultimately is what ruined what could have otherwise been a phenomenal game. Danmachi never hit top grossing. Never. And it wasn't going to. But what it did was it gave us a reason to keep summoning. I always use the analogy of dangling the carrot, but that's really what it did. You got 2, 3, 4 dupes, and you just need 2 more to complete it, and those 2 might cost you 20, 30, 40 bucks. Oh well. When you got a banner like the banners we got here, where it's $200 per dupe because the rates are so abysmal you can't pull them outside of that. And then if you consider that, it's 6 dupes to max out a unit. There is no point in my existence I could justify going $1,200 into a gacha game. Especially a gacha game that 2 years later closes like this and leaves us with nothing. So Dan Mimo left us with so much stuff. I'm still trying to get up on the Discord, guys, and I know a lot of you guys are waiting on that. As you guys know, that the schedule is really crazy for me right now, and it took forever to get the stuff from Japan. But I am going to start working on that here in the fall, and once it happens, it happens. But really and honestly and truly, I'm sad this game is closing, but I also kind of am not shocked. So we'll see what happens tomorrow, guys. We'll be live streaming and we'll be covering the story tomorrow. It's gonna be a ton of fun. So tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern, be here because we are going to cover all of that, and I'm going to make sure that I am here, prompt, on time, and ready to go, because this is a big one. This is like a big moment. Also, we've talked about what plans to do after this, and obviously I'm going to do a lot of Danmachi content as our long format content. I've got some Wistoria content coming up. We're going to do character deep dives. We're going to do lore, things like that. But as far as the live streams go, starting this Friday, I'm bringing back just the random live streams. We're going to mostly be doing indie games. I really love indie gaming. But for those of you guys that haven't been with us on Fridays and Saturdays, we've been lately playing Repo, and we've been having a blast doing it, although we're very toxic and horrible at it. It is going to be a lot of fun. So Fridays and Saturdays streams are coming back to YouTube this week. So I hope to see you guys there for that. When DANCHRO closes, or maybe even before that, if we just kind of run out of things to do, we'll go back into Dawnfall. We're going to play Dawnfall again on its hardest setting. Probably record a little bit more information on that. And I am going to be playing Infinite Combat finally. I've owned it for years, and I have never played it. I've heard it's atrocious, but I got to give it a fair shot. But then after that, it's all indie games. But I hope you guys stick around. It's going to be a lot of fun. Like I said, long format content on the channel for the time being is going to be all Danmachi Wistoria, basically anything Amori, light novel drops, things like that. We'll be covering all of that. Just general lore. I'm finally going to be reviewing the light novels. We've been talking about that. We've never done that. All that kind of stuff is coming here soon. So hope you guys stick with me. I'll be back with more coming up shortly. And like I said, tomorrow we'll be covering the story. And this is going to be a big, grandiose finale. So stay tuned, guys. There's a lot coming up, and it's gonna be fun. We're gonna enjoy the next 2 months. So see you around real soon.